Welcome to Latin 4. As you know, we'll be starting our reading with Virgil's Aeneid this year, and this is a more difficult text than the Caesar we were reading in the spring. So before we start, I'd like to say a few words to put the difficulty in context. Ever since you started studying the language, the Latin you've read has been accompanied by a range of supporting materials: vocabulary lists, grammar charts, cultural background material. All this stuff has been in English, and it's easy to come to the conclusion that if your Latin was better, if you already spoke the language, you wouldn't need any of it and you could just understand the text. This has never really been true. When you learned English, you had a teacher. There were all kinds of materials to help you understand even the most simple written texts. But when we get up to the level of Virgil, we have to face the fact that even for the Romans, this kind of material was necessary. Virgil's Aeneid was central to the Roman system of education, so there were lots of materials, lots of commentaries designed to help young people understand it. Remember in junior English when they gave you Shakespeare, and they also gave you No Fear Shakespeare so you could actually understand it? Well, Roman teachers produced similar material for their students, right? Simple prose versions of the story Virgil tells, or the kind of commentary that you see in the margins and at the bottom of the page when you look at Virgil's Latin text. The most complete collection of this kind of material that survives from Roman times is ascribed to a man named Maurus Servius Honoratus. This Servius lived in the 4th century AD, which is to say the 300s, and he was supposedly a pagan at a time when many of his contemporaries had converted, like the emperor, to Christianity. His commentary is not concerned with the deep questions of philosophy and religion, but mostly just explains line by line Virgil's poetry, not just the Aeneid, but the eclogues and the Georgics as well. Early printed editions of Virgil often include the commentary of Servius. Here's a page from a 16th century edition of the Georgics, Georgicorum, in which Virgil's poetry is here in the center, and Servius's commentary is off to the side. Right, here's Servius. Okay, the typographical conventions are a little different, but this works just like the commentary in your AP Latin book. So you see a couple of words in Virgil's poem, quod super est, what remains, and that'll appear here, and then there's a bracket. And then he's explaining, non quod de est, sed quod sequitur. Remember, way back in the 16th century, the S looked like a little F. Anyway, it just goes on out like this, line after line. So you see premes here, you see premes there, bracket, exclamation. He provides help with word order, quercumque virgulta. Those words go together, but they're separated by the verb, and he just writes them right here together. Right, so all the same kind of help, that would have had a little ... in between it in your AP Latin book, but all the same kind of assistance that the book provides at a very line by line, what does it mean, how does it work kind of level. I've posted a link to Servius's commentary from Perseus Project in the resources folder of your Schoology page, in case you're ever curious about what Servius has to say at any given point in the poem. In general, I don't recommend you spend a lot of time doing this, because you'll find that he just says in Latin what the commentary in your Latin book says in English. But I would like you to give some thought to the quote that's up here on the screen. This is from Servius's very brief preface to his commentary on the Aeneid. It's a very famous quote because it claims to explain the reason Virgil wrote the poem. Intentio Vergilii haec est, Homerum imitari et Augustum laudare apparentibus. Virgil's intention is this: to imitate Homer and to praise Augustus through his ancestors. Now, if you take this statement to mean that all Virgil is trying to do in the Aeneid is imitate Homer and praise Augustus, this is obviously way too simplistic. I mean, it's not like Virgil's plagiarizing Homer in Latin and just hoping that no one will notice. He mentions Augustus exactly one time by name in the entire poem. And as we'll see when we read it, the stuff that his ancestor Aeneas does in the poem is by no means always worthy of praise. Now, what Virgil is trying to do in the Aeneid, and what I think Servius is talking about here in the simplest possible terms, is to create a kind of new franchise in the Homeric universe, and a mythical genealogy that connects a minor Trojan character from the Iliad with both the original foundation of Rome by Romulus and the new Roman order that Augustus is trying to create after the end of the civil wars. I'll come back to both of these ideas, the Homeric background and the historical context of what Virgil is doing, as we look at particular passages in the reading list. But I should say at the outset, a lot of what I'll be doing in these videos is exactly what Servius does in his actual commentary, which is to say, explaining the syntax of words and phrases, pointing out rhetorical figures, just showing how the mechanics of the language make it possible to understand what's going on. We'll start next time with the first 11 lines, but until then, I'll leave you with the following image, which I hope will help crystallize the position of Aeneas in the pantheon of Homeric heroes.